Hello and welcome to Global One Media Stocks to Watch. These are exclusive interviews with senior leaders of public companies. I'm your host, Michelle Martin. Today we explore an early stage project in a sector which is so important for sustainable agriculture and the future of food. Today I'm joined by Farhad Abbasov, Chairman and Director of Millennial Potash Corp, which trades on Canada's TSX Venture Exchange under the ticker MLP, in the US over the counter as MLPNF, and in Frankfurt as X0D. Millennial Potash Corp, the exploration company, is known for their Banio Potash project in Gabon, their flagship project. So what is the potential of potash assets in the context of the global economy and current geopolitical tensions? Let's find out. Welcome, Farhad Abbasov.
Hi, Michelle. Good to be here.
Fantastic to chat with you today. Let's start with an understanding which is at the core of your business. Not many investors might know the need for potash. Why is it so important, particularly for a rapidly growing world?
Well, potash is used mostly in fertilizer, Michelle. Almost, I think, 95% of the world's supply of potash goes into fertilizer use, and it is becoming critical fertilizer for a number of reasons. But one of the main reasons is that it is highly geographically concentrated. So almost 35% of potash comes from only two countries, Russia and Belarus. And since the war broke out in Ukraine, both of those countries have come under severe sanctions from various countries, including their potash sectors. So it is important to have new sources of potash, preferably in neutral and more investor-friendly jurisdictions. Hence, our potash project in Gabon is becoming more important for world supply of potash and, of course, for food security as well.
Yeah, I want to pick up on that point of food security and supply chains. If we look at the potash market today, help us understand where the biggest suppliers are vis-a-vis where the largest pool of customers are.
Well, it's a very interesting situation, Michelle, that it is, as I said, it's highly geographically concentrated. Now, I said already that Belarus and Russia supply 35% of world's potash. Now, if you add Canada, that goes up to like 70%. So between three countries, or among three countries, I should say, 75% world supply depends on Canada, specifically the province of Saskatchewan and the Russia and Belarus. And then, of course, there's smaller production centers in Germany, in the Middle East, in Western China, and so forth. But the rest of the world buys and consumes potash. So when you look at the demand side, it has been very robust over many years, and it's been growing leaps and bounds, primarily because of course, the growth of population, but also because of the soil depletion almost everywhere. Now, in terms of large importers of potash, Brazil is the largest one, about 12 million tons of potash per year, followed by the US and China, about 10 million tons each, and then India between 4 and 5 million tons a year. And again, almost all countries consume potash as well. Now, we're in a unique position because once we're in production, because we're in West Africa, we will be the nearest supplier of potash to Brazil, which is obviously, as I said, the largest importer of potash, but also will be nearest supplier to Africa proper. The continent imports and almost about 2 million tons of potash a year, and there's no domestic production there. So it is really critical to be in a position to supply potash to both South America and Africa.
You mentioned the proximity factor. What other factors would sustain growth in the market as you see it?
Well, the main factor is, of course, the population growth. Last year we hit 8 billion people, and obviously that's going to continue growing. And as I mentioned, soil depletion, in other words, even those agricultural lands that use a certain amount of potash before, now they require more. And another thing is, of course, you mentioned that earlier, the supply chain disruptions. So think about this, that a lot of traders, a lot of users as well have been buying potash again from three countries, as I mentioned, three jurisdictions. And now two of them, significant producers, have come under sanctions. And that creates a lot of headache for a lot of, again, both traders and direct users. So there will be structural changes. But I think, on the demand side, it will stay very, very strong. So that's exactly why we got involved with potash, because when we get involved with the project as a group, we actually look at the supply-demand dynamics of that particular commodity for the next 3 to 5 years. So just addressing again your question directly, we're looking at about 70 to 74 million tons of potash demand per year today, and is expected to reach about 90 million tons of potash by 2030.
It's a really robust demand. Take us to one of your projects, in fact, your flagship, the Banyo Potash project. How does this position your company as a key supplier for the future? And do you have anything to share with investors listening in on its potential capacity?
Absolutely, Michelle. Look, I mean, every time we'll look at a project, we'll look at all the aspects, because you cannot just choose a project based, let's say, on the strength of the geological deposit, because there's so many other factors that come into play, and that all should translate into, if I put it like in one word or one phrase, it's low cost structure. Because they're big operators, as I already mentioned, big producers out of Canada, out of Russia and Belarus, with very low cost production centers, and we need to be able to compete with them. So there are quite a few projects out there, potash projects, but they are hampered, constrained in one way or another. Either it's not world-class size project, or they cannot really achieve lower operating costs, or their capex is too high, and so forth. This project is unique in many aspects. One is, this has been drilled in the past, so we know exactly what is in the ground. All we need to do is basically to confirm it, but also expand it. So we think this is going to be a very large project in terms of the size of the deposit. The second thing is, again, based on the historic drilling, but also our recent drilling, deposit is very thick. So we're talking up to 100-meter thickness in the south of the project, about 30-40-meter thickness in the north. So we're talking about significantly thick deposit, probably one of the thickest deposits in the world, frankly. Now, this is as far as the deposit is concerned. The second thing is, of course, the availability of water, because we'll be using what we call solution mining. Now, solution mining is a well-known methodology, whereas you pump a saline solution, a saline water into your ore body, you dissolve potash and you pump it back up to the surface for processing. We're well familiar with this because our previous two potash projects, Potash 1 and Alana Potash, were amenable solution mining as well. And again, the methodology is well proven. Now, for that, we also need access to water, and we're right on the coast. We can use seawater. So the availability of seawater, as well as thickness of potash deposits, will bring together, we think, the lower cost of production, as well as, of course, capital requirements. And we're also in a good jurisdiction, despite recent, short-lived turbulence in Gabon. It's still the quietest, it's still the most stable country in Africa. It is a very wealthy country, and they're very keen on developing their mining industry, because it's historically been oil and gas country. So they really want to diversify away, and the mining industry is one of their top priorities.
You mentioned short-term turbulence. Let's talk about your Banyo Potash project. We've recently in Gabon seen a new prime minister. A new 2-year transition has been promised before free elections by Gabon's new military rulers. What do these recent political developments mean for your project? Do they influence your operations?
Michelle, they haven't had any impact in terms of actual operations. Of course, it had what we call marketing impact or perception impact, because we're trading in the stock market. So the stock, unfortunately, got hit with all the news coming from Gabon. But in terms of its impact on the ground, it's been frankly non-existent. And I'll give you a specific example. During the elections, again, we're talking this in the last 2 or 3 weeks. During the elections, we continued operating on our project, and then even when the coup was announced and they introduced and imposed a curfew for a couple of weeks, again, throughout all of those events, we continued operations. But I should also mention that it wasn't just us who continued operating. All other companies, oil and gas companies, mining operations, and there are some large international operations there on the oil and gas side. We got Total, Shell, many other companies operating. On the mining side, Eramet, which suspended their activities for only a day, and then they immediately resumed their operations. They produce manganese in Gabon. There's also Barrick Gold. They have exploration project for gold there. There's Fortescue with iron ore projects. So all of these companies continued their operations without any interruption or any disruption. There's been no unrest in the country. The streets were quiet. In fact, all our senior management, including our CEO, was actually in the country during the coup. So my first reaction was, of course, to worry about them. When I called them, they were surprised that that was all worked up. So so it was very quiet there. But of course, it will have impact on how the outside world perceives the country, especially the risk profile of the country. I think after 2 weeks after the new government has shown that they're really, I would say, investor friendly, and they're going to continue with in general, with the same investment policies, investor friendly policies of the previous government. Things have quieted down. And the most importantly, the new government sent the right signal that, all the international agreements, contracts, all the operations, all the licenses and permits are going to be respected, and, the business as usual will go on. And as you mentioned, yes, they've already put together a transitional government. They brought in actually a very well-respected former leader of the opposition, who is an economist himself. So I think these are all right messages and signals coming from the new government to all the operators in the country. And one other important thing, Michelle, I want to say that since these changes have happened, we've had actually new interest from some domestic investors in Gabon. And that is something new. And I think that's another kind of an indication of things to come. So in other words, they want to divert quite a bit of investments domestically as well.
Fantastic to hear about business continuity in Gabon. Help investors who are watching and listening understand why they should consider investing in Millennial Potash as an exposure play to potash.
So look, Michelle, I'll tell a little bit about our background so that your listeners understand. So our group has been together for almost 15 years, and we've built projects, developed them, and then eventually sell and exit through M&A transactions. Most recently, we did that with a lithium company, also called Millennial Lithium. We took it from about $40 million company to $490 million, and sold it last year to a company called Lithium Americas. Before that, we had successful exits with 2 potash companies. Alana Potash sold in 2015 for $470 million, and then Potash One sold in 2013 for $434 million. So the plan is to do the same here. And this project is at the same level of development as Millennial Lithium, for example, was in 2017, a very early stage. We just started drilling. So the upside potential is tremendous here because the company is tiny at this point. And we just finished the first drill hole. The plan is to finish the first stage of drilling by November, and then put out what we call maiden resource estimate on the northern part of the project, which we believe is going to be large already. And then we will do a preliminary economic assessment based on that estimate. And meanwhile, we'll move our drill rig down to the south and drill the southern part, which is actually, we think, thicker and richer in terms of potash deposit, of course. And then the PEA should be done by the first quarter of next year, and we'll finish the expanded drilling or expanded resource estimate by the same time as well. So we think in the next 2 or 3 months, we're going to have very robust, very positive news coming out of the company. And this is probably the right time to be in it. And of course, from there on, we'll look at our options. Of course, we'll start with the feasibility study next year. We'll do environmental. And we think this is going to be a world-class project in terms of the size of the project, its cost structure, and its location. And I think this is, whether we're going to sell this company in the next couple of years or we're going to build this ourselves, but this is going to be the next new producer of potash in the next 2 or 3 years.
Fantastic to hear about the experience of the leadership team as well. We've been looking at Millennial Potash Corp and its exploration activities at its Banio Potash project in Gabon and its potential to be a key player in the global potash market. I'm Michelle Martin, speaking today with Farhad Abbasov, Chairman and Director of Millennial Potash Corp. Thank you, Farhad.
Thanks so much, Michelle.